2021. And are there any apologies? There being none, any conflicts of interest? There being none, so we go straight into the representation hearings. Is that correct? Yeah. Yeah. And we have three. No, sorry, what was that? Joyce. Oh, Joyce. Okay, beg your pardon. So my hearing's bad enough, and so even weird. So I'd just like to welcome Joyce. Would you like to come forward? You've done this. Yes, please.
Can I take my mask off when I'm speaking or not?
Yeah. Well, you're over 2 meters away from everybody, so
Yeah.
is that all right?
Yeah.
No. What was that?
No.
She's not allowed to say no.
In theory, the rules say no.
I want to hold it, or just, I don't know, just keep it there.
It's just with my glasses fogged up, then I can't see it.
So, I mean, so the choice is yours, you're still wearing it.
Thank you.
So, Joyce, welcome.
I'm here for Tyra Residents and Ratepayers Association. And Natalie Jackson, another committee was going to be coming with us today, but she's not particularly well, so she decided against coming. You probably have had some contact with Natalie. Natalie Jackson is a developer, and she's supplied us with a lot of figures in terms of population demographics.
Excuse me, I can't hear. It's just got a feedback on her microphone.
Well, we can't do much about that, I'm sorry, Gary. What was that? We moved in.
Thank you. Is that better?
Yeah, and you'll just have to try and throw your voice piece, Jules.
Okay, not easy for me. There's 4 parts to our submission, which I wanted to briefly touch on today. The unfair representation for non-resident ratepayers, the difficulty for non-residents of having to opt in to vote, the lack of councillor representation in Tairua-Pauanui, and I'd like to speak briefly about our community board. As you've seen from our submission, we think the exclusion of non-residents from the population count when deciding on how many councillors should be allocated to each ward is extremely unfair. In the South East ward, this means that the number of councillors is determined by just 36% of ratepayers and just 44% for Mercury Bay. For October, New Zealand, the average is 90%. Natalie has provided a table which I hope has been distributed to you, which shows the figures throughout the country, and you'll see that TCDC tops the list. These non-resident ratepayer discrepancies between wards make it impossible for South East ward ratepayers to have an equitable representation in terms of council numbers. Since our submission, Natalie has actually been in touch with your electoral officer, Ms. Dal Ofskoski, and he's made us aware of the restrictions of the 19X clause in the Local Government Act, which refers to ordinary usual residents. So we understand why council is making the choices that they are. However, we don't think that was really intended to impact so heavily on communities such as Thames-Coromandel. And the government currently is proposing a review of the electoral law. So we would very much like to rectify this clause through Parliament, and we intend to do some work on that ourselves in the very near future. We think it would be quite simple to change by simply having another clause in there exempting areas with high non-residents, say if 20 or 30%. And that would make it possible for us to include all of our ratepayers in the selection of number of councillors for wards. We hope that council can support us on this work and perhaps work with us on it. The other issue for non-resident ratepayers is the need to opt in when voting, which again disenfranchises them. The turnout in local body elections is poor enough, but this is another hurdle when you're outside the area. And I wonder if that is something that council chooses to do, or whether, again, that is something that you're mandated to do. And would seem to me, if they could be sent, provided they were on the electoral roll, if they could be sent voting paper, then at least there's more chance that they would participate in the elections. Now, the other issue I'd like to address is the council representation on the Tairua Pawanui Community Board. The last election, we voted for 2 councillors and a community board of two councillors and 4 elected members. However, as you know, we've only had 1 councillor attend our board meetings or take any interest in affairs for our townships. We think this is unfair for our community and for Wangata as well. We do need to have 2 councillors on our board and 2 voices at the council table, and we expect that this will be the case after the next election. We do value community boards, especially in communities such as ours, where we don't have a resident councillor. Almost invariably, a councillor is elected to our ward are coming from Wangata, just because of the population differences. So normally our councillors reside outside of Tairua. We don't have a council office, and the community board provides a really clear link, or an important link, for ratepayers to council. However, we do think that there are some shortcomings with our community board, and I'm not sure whether this is coming from instructions from council itself, or whether this is the way our particular board is operating. But they seem to be very focused just on those areas which they have delegations for. But the Local Government Act does stipulate that they act as an advocate for the interests of its community, or report on any matters of interest or concern to the community board. So we think that there is a mandate there for a much wider participation, rather than just footpaths and parks and that sort of thing. And we'd like to see that, simply because that is the one area we have where we can go to the council and let them know what our problems are, or what we're concerned about in the area. So that's really about all I wanted to mention, and just hope that perhaps we can ask council to work with us, even through your electoral officers at council, to try and get some law changes, so that we represent all of our ratepayers. They're the guys that pay the most money, have the most expensive houses in town, and they just are not being looked after at all. So thank you.
Thank you, Joyce, and we appreciate the concern that you have around the 52% of our ratepayers being absentees and needing to be participants around that around the decision-making table for our communities, and so and taking part in that, being able to.
Yes.
And it's something that I think we've all struggled with, because as much as we try and encourage them to give up their email addresses so that we can, because they have to subscribe, we can't just send stuff to them.
You can't.
No, well, we can send them information, but for us to be able to send them things on a regular basis, they need to subscribe. In terms of registering as a voter, they need to do that, and we've gone out there as much as we can and have done every year to try and get them to do that, but it's very, very difficult. So I'm not quite sure how much more we can do that, and every time we do that, there's a cost to that. However, we are putting more emphasis into that. I understand we're going to be putting another notice out. Yeah.
Mm.
So, we're doing our best, and I have to say that, Councillor Gottlieb, who's online behind you, he's been driving to that as well, because as you appreciate, it's a big thing from Parliament. I'm taking the opportunity, it's got a bit of time. Martin has a question. Yeah,
saying mostly councillors you're saying seem to get the southeastern ones seem to come from Parliament. But has there been people from Thames-Coromandel elected as southeastern councillors?
On council,
Yeah.
Not,
not that I'm aware of, the mayor was from Thames-Coromandel years ago, but that's got very much of that. Haven't had a councillor from Thames.
the problem for,
sure.
we've had people stand,
Yeah.
but the problem is that we have a much smaller population. The people who stand in Wangwata are generally known to that community, so they tend to be the ones that get voted. Even
I recognise that person.
yeah, or they've been active in their community on other issues, so they're well known to the community. And they do come, people like Terry come to our ratepayers meetings and engage with us, but it's not quite the same situation as having a councillor that lives in your township.
Can I just like to acknowledge Kerry for being very dedicated in making sure that he goes right around the whole board and represents the whole board. And of course, the title of Paranui Community Board is pretty heavily weighted with Tairua residents are elected.
It is at the moment, three out of four, yeah. Oh no, yes, 3 out of 4, yeah. Yes, that's right.
Gary has a question, I think. Gary?
Yes, I did put my hand up. I understand your concern, but the problem, and everyone knows that since I've been on council, I've been saying we've got to get absentee owners on the electoral roll, and I've driven the council mad and staff trying to get sorted, and I'm working on that. One matter I should raise with you is I got elected as a councillor, and my experience with other councils I'm been involved in over the years is if you're elected as a councillor, you're elected as a councillor, but you are not elected to be on the community board. And it seems to be this is a basis of which they operate in Thames-Coromandel District. Now, as I say, in our Eastern Ward, we have 2 community boards. That's the only one that has 2 community boards. And I, with constraints of time, said, well, look, I just can only attend one community board like other elected representatives. But I must say that Terry has been very good keeping me up to play, and a lot of people will know that I have been quite involved with them in certain issues that have concerned them. So it's not as though I've ignored your area. I've been quite active and proactive, and as Terry will be able to confirm. So it's a difficult situation where you have 2 community boards to get on in the Eastern Ward, and it's just an onerous task, which I try and keep on top of by looking at what's being said at the meeting and getting Terry to keep me up to play, and dealing on occasions with a number of elected board representatives. So that's all I can do at present. And I just really think that we need to think, are we in this council required to be on the community board, or do we attend and leave it up to the community board to vote on issues which concern them? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Joyce, if I can ask you a question. My question is, the issue is trying to get absentee ratepayers to register for as a voter.
Right.
How do you get them to do that? If they've been given the information on a number of occasions and consistently, how do you get them to register?
Well, we try through the Ratepayers Association to contact those people that are members of our association, but of course we don't have details for people who are not members. So and it tends to be that those people who join the Ratepayers Association are the more motivated, more engaged ones anyway. So yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I'm hoping that you guys might know the answer to that, because it's
Try as we might,
yeah.
no matter what we do, it's still down to the ratepayer to register. We can't do that for you.
Right, even if they're already on the electoral roll.
That's right, they have to register. It's
Okay.
their responsibility.
Because, you know, for the resident ratepayer, provided you're on the roll, you get to vote, but that doesn't apply for non-residents.
For a non-resident, they have to register.
Right,
So that they can get their one vote as a ratepayer.
right,
Because they're already voting in another area, which is their primary place of residence. And so they get one vote as an absentee ratepayer per year. And so it always comes down to that. We can throw as much information at them as we can and do our best, but in the end, it's up to the absentee ratepayer to register in the area as a voter. We can't do that for them.
right. The other thing that concerns is the information like the coastal management plan, for instance, that's going to be out there shortly for the community. A lot of those people that are non-resident own properties right on the beachfront.
That's right.
And they're not going to be connected with that sort of information. And, you know, that's kind of a worry for me.
Getting a bit hard.
Actually, because the information on the DCDC website, every magazine, everything that goes out, and every paper publication, it's there. So if people don't read it and don't participate in it, they can get horse to water. So we do it in private video. We have exactly the same issue to get them. When I'm out there, probably in a beer, I'm seeing them saying, have you registered to vote here? But with all the things that go on, people encouraged. And then with the shore management, there's only a small percent of people that even live, some even live on the beach, that participate. With all the effort, so there's no,
It is difficult, I
there's a
agree.
lot of effort going in, but if people don't take what's been given to them, and I encourage that elected representatives and the people in the community, when they're having this discussion, to answer that same question of people all the time, because it can't be done by the mayor or the chief executive or else on their own.
Can I just say one more thing? I have been.
Terry and Gary.
So yeah, do it, I can do it, fantastic down here, very much way to tell the story. And it's going to take some time and effort, but I think it's worth pursuing, really important.
Good.
What I've done in the past is I go and buy the electoral roll of the stock here, $75, and send a letter to the non-resident ratepayers at my cost. So I've done that in the past, but I think if we pulse it through the council's, I don't know, response demand or something like that, as we get closer to the election, get some people motivated enough around it, especially with things happening at the moment, there might be more motivation to be involved.
Right, Gary, you could.
Well, I think
Gary, last question.
Well, I think we just need to make sure on the council we do get that out, which is promised to happen. Okay.
Gary.
Could I just respond to Councillor Gregory about the community board, because your current proposal also says 2 councillors and 4 community board members. So that's what our expectation is. Is that not going to happen again? We'd be extremely concerned about that. You know, that's what your paper says: 2 councillors, 4 community board members.
It's these wards.
Yeah.
That's in that ward, that's right.
But it's not if we only have 1 councillor coming.
Rightio. That's it. I'm going to truncate that now. Thank you very much. Because we actually been outside the brief, really strict hearing process.
But it's nice when there's not so many people here. Thank you.
I appreciate you wearing your mask and you know, just meeting the challenges that this presents. So thank you.
Thank you.
Drive carefully.
Thank you.
You know, we're going to be back forward to report that on.
Moved Billy, seconded Martin. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. So we're now into, do you want to close that meeting? We're closing that meeting. So we're now into the council